To analyze a problem is to show the problem, not the process, permeated with judgments which the analysis itself generates a priori. To analyze is to block off from the outset any possibility for the analysis on the part of the interlocutor. To show the process of a problem, on the other hand, is to submit it to judgment without pronouncing the verdict. There is a style of news reporting which puts more emphasis on the commentary than on the news item. There is another kind of reporting which presents the news and elevates it through the arrangement of the item on the page or by its position in the paper. To show the process of a problem is like showing the very development of the news item without commentary. It is like showing the multifaceted evolution of a piece of information without evaluating it. The subjective element is the selection of the problem, conditioned as it is by the interest of the audience, which is the subject. The objective element is showing the process, which is the object. So this is huge. This is huge. And I honestly think we could spend an hour really on this, because this is actually really about artistic process and how it differs from other kind of processes. But I'm gonna do a couple of things in here. Process which generates the problems. Now, that I think has a lot to do with a lot of movies wanting to lie. They want to create this idea that people are fixed from the beginning. The characters of destiny, right? They were always destined to be this, whether it's rich or whether it's, be negative. That's why films like City of God never really worked for me. I always found like that film, the young guy in City of God was like this like villain at like 8, shooting people, and I was like, he came out the womb evil, and like I just don't buy it. It's a negative. It's a poor approach, and I'll say that. It is just the opposite of cinema, principally dedicated to celebrating results. The opposite of self-sufficient and contemplative cinema. The opposite of cinema which beautifully illustrates ideas or concepts which we already possess. So the cinema celebrating results. I think that's a interesting one. Movies that already seem to like here's where we are, and not talk about it being in the process, right? Self-sufficient, right? Kind of, my own, I'm going to figure it out on my own, right? And contemplative cinema, being super contemplative, but like really not going anywhere, right? Lost in thought experiments, right? The opposite of which beautifully creates ideas or concepts which we already possess. Beautifully illustrated. I think he's talking about the aestheticization of these things, it becoming a kind of aesthetic practice, rather than showing process in a kind of what he would later talk about ways that could be crude or rough. Because he talks about this narcissistic posture has nothing to do with those who struggle. If you want to beautify struggle, it has nothing to do with us. That's for somebody else. To show a process is not exactly equivalent to analyzing it. So this is really interesting. And this is, to me, I think what makes cinema very different than other forms. To analyze in the traditional sense of the word always implies a closed prior judgment, right? And he's talking about you trying to get to somewhere on the back end, right? To analyze a problem, to show the problem, not the process, permeated with the judgments which the analysis itself generates a priori. To analyze is to block off from the outset any possibility for the analysis on the part of the interlocutor, right? He's talking about you're blocking off the people involved being able to kind of go through a process on their own and being able to kind of get through that. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is a perfect example of where I need help. So because I start to feel the intellectual grip slipping from me. So for instance, when you because I've been staying out of the chat, but I did catch a little bit after you said what you said about City of God, and I agree with what Ricky said, that that everybody says we're supposed to see that movie, and I've never heard anyone criticize it.
Yeah.
But is this an example of what you mean? Or what you were explaining? Because the process by which Oh, there goes the thumb. The process by which African people in Brazil are able to be shown suffer the process of the colonization and the previous enslavement is erased.
Yes.
And all we get is the symptom of this young boy in full-fledged gangsterism.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the people are themselves, to your last point, or to Espinosa's last point, is the humanity in the process that reduces a child to that is erased. I mean, that we're just, it's all that's erased. And
yeah.
people,
And
okay.
100%. Yes, that 100% with the City of God thing. I mean, it's like Juice, right? Like Tupac's character is just crazy, right? He's just crazy. Like Juice.
Well, we are meant to see him go through a slight arc. But you're right. Yeah, I get it. You're right. You're right.
But at its core, the conditions which made these young men get into, because I don't actually think Juice, as if you think about it as a container, is a bad story. It's a story that we probably know. Dudes get into something and then like it just goes awry and then people change. But it's not about, it's still about them as individuals. And we can easily cast off Pac's character as just the crazy dude on the block. Right. He's just crazy. You know what I'm saying? Right. And Omar Epps' character as the one who's going to get out. And we root for him because why? He has a way to get out of it all. And, you know, but what also Espinosa is saying is to analyze the problem is to show the problem, not the process permeated with judgments, with the analysis itself generates a priori. To analyze is to block off from the outset of any possibility for the analysis on the part of the interlocutor, the spectator. The fact that you're basically telling them, this is what I want you to know, rather than they can sit within it and the artistic work becomes much big and they're like taking pieces from themselves and trying to figure out, I was actually talking to someone about a film. I forget which film it was. And I told him, I said, what I loved about the film was I was able to sit with it and decipher various things about the world around me on my own terms a bit too, right? They were guiding me, but like I didn't feel like they were telling me this is what you have to think as much as this is what the world is. Now, what does that make you think about? What does that make you consider about the life that you're living, right? And I think this is really what Espinosa is talking about, right? This kind of, and if you connect it to the idea of elitism, he's speaking about the elite cultures are pushing you to think certain things. And we have to kind of stop that, right? And he continues it with showing the process of a problem, is submitted to the judgment without pronouncing the verdict, right? It's like the audience then becomes juries. They become people who can spectate and think about it, and which I think also just creates great conversation after a film. We've experienced films like that when you get out of it and it's been so, you've been empowered as an audience member where now you and the people who you went and saw it with can litigate not the film, but the thing that the film is talking about, right? The world that it's showing us, and we can sit here and we can really begin to, go through a process of like self-analysis or an analysis of the world around us.